Good evening and welcome to the End Poverty Edinburgh Scottish Election Hustings 2026. My name is Caroline Coley and I'll be chairing tonight with my colleague Linda Craik asking the questions. End Poverty Edinburgh, or EPE, is a group of citizens with lived experience of poverty that was founded in 2020 off the back of the Edinburgh Poverty Commission report of 2020 that outlines how poverty can be eradicated in the city by 2030. We regularly meet with the council, MSPs, the third sector, and a wide range of organisations, businesses, and charities to work towards the goal of eradicating poverty. Please note that this hustings is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube shortly, so that those who cannot watch live are able to hear the candidates' responses. Tonight, we are joined by candidates from 5 of the major parties to ask them why we in the city and the country as a whole should vote for them and what they will do to combat poverty in Scotland. Now, you may note that there isn't anyone here tonight from the Scottish Conservative Party. We did send out an invite but received no response. Make of that what you will. But please do join me in welcoming Ross Clark from the SNP, who is a list candidate for South Scotland and a last-minute replacement for Tommy Shepherd, who has had to cancel his appearance this evening. Thank you, Ross, for joining us at the last minute. Eleanor Ryan Saha from Scottish Labour, who is standing in Edinburgh Northern and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East. Kate Nevins from Scottish Greens, who is standing in Edinburgh North Eastern and Leith and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East. Gary Neal from Reform UK, who is standing in Edinburgh Central and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East, and Jane Alliston Pickard from the Liberal Democrats, who is standing in Edinburgh Southern and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East. Shortly, Linda will be asking 3 questions. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer each question in turn. I'll be timing your response, so please forgive me if I'm looking down at the timer on my phone. And when you have 30 seconds remaining, I will raise my hand, my digital hand. At the end of the 3 minutes, you'll be asked to draw to a close. If you continue past this time, I, with no mercy or hesitation, will mute you. This is to ensure that we stay to time and allow everyone equal space to answer the questions. And while it might be tempting to only respond to those who have spoken before you, we would invite you to stick to answering the questions so that the audience are able to get a full understanding of what you and your party's plans are to tackle the issues presented. So now I'll pass you to Linda for the first question, which is on concern for those who can't work. Linda.
Thank you, Caroline. As Caroline's indicated, this question is in relation to concern for those who can't work. Now, the health component of universal credit has been reduced, and there are constant attempts to reduce eligibility for PIP and adult disability payment. The language used by all parties and the media is about pushing people who are disabled and suffering from long-term health conditions into work. So our question is, what are you and your party going to do to protect those who cannot work and ensure that they can live with dignity and respect? And I'd like to start off by putting that to Ross Clark from the SNP first, please.
Oh, thank you very much for the question, and thank you for having me here this evening. One thing I want to kind of underpin our or my answer here is, dignity, fairness, and respect, which is something that underpins the social security system which we have here in Scotland. I've got some personal family experience of someone else who's went through that PIP system, that UK government system that they had in the fitness to work assessments. And I'm so glad in Scotland that we've taken a different approach, again, with that fairness at the very heart of everything that we do. There's lots of things we do here in Scotland to support people who cannot work, which I think is a key thing to consider. And I do like the way the question's been asked, because of course we want to support people into work, but there are people who would love to work but simply can't. So we've got things like adult disability payment, which is uprated each year by inflation, and that's a commitment we've got, a statutory commitment we've made against our other social security benefits, some of which are unique in Scotland, such as the game-changing Scottish Child Payment, lifting children out of poverty. And we will absolutely resist any attacks from the UK government or other parties on the most vulnerable in our society. All governments, all spheres of government will have financial challenges. We have had financial challenges and will face even more, but we will ensure that burden isn't placed on the most vulnerable in society and those who are unable to work. There's lots of commitments on the cost of living in which we've made in our manifesto, lots of action which we've taken already in government, the most generous package in the UK, and want to build on that more and more. I think specifically on disability, we want to recognise the cost of disability. I want to review the cost of disability and review all the interventions and measures to make sure they're actually addressing the needs of people, and embed that into every level of the public sector. So one of the messages I've got is the SNP will always stand by those who aren't able to work and making sure we're protecting that safety net, which is currently available to people, not only protecting it, but also expanding it over the next Parliament. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Ross, and for sticking to time. There's a benchmark for everyone else. Same question over to Jane Alison Pickard from the Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you. So our manifesto places a strong emphasis on dignity, well-being, independence and care. And it certainly doesn't focus on forcing people into work if they are unable to do so. Our concern is quite different with the Liberal Democrats. Primarily, at the moment, we're aware that Scots applying for ADP or carer support payments are facing longer waiting lists than their equivalents in England. And that's of immediate concern. And when there's inefficiencies like this, they need to be investigated and addressed as soon as possible as the next Parliament starts, because the human cost in that of worry, of anxiety, of greater debt, frankly, and of debt being taken on from quite risky or bad actors is high. So we would like to see a smoother running of the social services system. But our overall approach is to be prioritising care systems and support services rather than tightening eligibility, and making sure that there is health-led support, that it's not based on a conditionality of getting back to work solely. It's unrealistic for some of our people, and we know about the health inequalities in Scotland compared to other countries. The Liberal Democrats have pledged for an increase of 400 million in social care investment. Our priority is to have people living independently and living with dignity. And we want to make sure that there are sufficient care workers within that industry to make sure that that's a reality for people who need that kind of at-home care support. We also want to see the provision of appropriate services, whatever age you are. And I know that in our recent negotiations that we were involved in with the Scottish Government, we won more funding to keep Corsford College operating, which is a special needs college in the West for some of our more disabled youth, incredibly important. There is also an issue about making sure that those with a disability who want to work can work, and facilitating that and supporting that. Some of other parties talk about a hand up, but we want to ensure that there is also a ladder and accessible means to do that. There is an employment gap at the moment of 32% between those who identify as disabled versus those non-disabled in terms of employment. And those that want to work should be enabled to work. So we would, in our manifesto, introduce specialist disability employment support and increase awareness of access to work and ensure a speed up of the application process with employers for access to work. We also want to make sure, we know it's a big barrier for disabled people who are in work and need to change work, that the support they receive follows them. And we need to make sure that the system works appropriately to give anybody working who has a disability the same flexibility and choices that they have in where they're employed as an able-bodied person. Mental health is very relevant here, and we seek to improve outcomes, whether by better pathways to diagnosis of ADHD and autism, and we won more funding in the budget for that, and support through
your thoughts, please.
So much to say. Support through mental health hubs as well to support those with a disability that is identified as mental health concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jane. Once again, same question to Kate Nevins from the Scottish Greens.
Thank you.
Over to you, Kate.
Thanks. So my background's working in human rights and equalities, and including working with disabled people's organisations in Scotland. And it's been pretty appalling watching what's been happening to disabled people at the hands of various governments over the last decade or so. And I think this rhetoric coming from a lot of mainstream, like the political mainstream, around getting disabled people and people with long-term health conditions back into work. It's not a welfare policy, it's a cost-cutting exercise that's dressed up in this like language of aspiration, and it's causing real harm to people. And reducing the health component of universal credit and tightening eligibility for PIP and ADP doesn't, it just makes people that are struggling struggle more. And the Scottish Greens, we will fight this at every level available to us. So one of the big things we would do is embed the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities into Scots law through a human rights bill. And that means that every public body in Scotland will have a legal duty to advance the rights of disabled people, not just avoid the worst abuses. We'll push the UK government to reverse the cuts to universal credit. And we'll review the Scottish ADP to work out why uptake in Scotland is so low and make sure that it is accessible and that the waiting lists come down. I think the Greens have been the only political party in Scottish Parliament that have really been ringing the warning bells around ADP. It was a system that was supposed to be fairer. Another thing we'll do, or I will do personally, is work really closely with the amazing disabled people's organisations that we have in Scotland, who are doing the frontline work to support communities and work with them to fight the way that people are having to justify their existence to a benefits assessor. For disabled people that are in work or keen to work, I agree with Jane. It's about improving working conditions, making work accessible, making it dignified and fair, and addressing the barriers, the societal barriers to disabled people's participation. It's not about changing us as people, it's about changing the system. I get support from Inclusion Scotland to run for election. So Inclusion Scotland have this amazing access to elected office fund that I've been able to apply for and receive that helps me address some of the barriers I face from my disabilities to running for office. And that kind of system is amazing, and it would be great to see other things like that. And then finally, really quickly, and this applies actually I think to all three of the questions that we were getting asked this evening, is that we as Scottish Greens, we will work towards a universal basic income. So it's a regular payment that goes to everyone unconditionally, so that no one's basic life security depends on proving to a hostile system that we deserve support. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that really comprehensive answer there, Kate. Now going to pass over to Gary Neal from Reform UK. Over to you, Gary. You're on mute, Gary. You'll have to take off your mute button.
Can you hear me now? I beg your pardon. Sorry, I had to switch from the laptop to my phone. My broadband is not good. I'll make the best of it. And a very good evening to all of you. So your question is about really those that can't work and people that are disabled. There is no question that anyone that cannot work, that is long-term unemployed in terms of disability or the inability to work, they will be protected. One of the things that we will do at Reform is to protect our most vulnerable. That's the first thing I will say on that. So there is no question. I think Kate and Jane have made mention of the universal credit system. That system, sadly for us in Scotland, is Westminster dominated, and it's not a good system. There are gaps in it. We'll come on into this in later questions. So we will be looking in Scotland, in Holyrood, to make sure that there is support locally for disabled people, long-term unemployed, long-term sick. There is no question that the most vulnerable will be protected. At the same time, you mentioned the word dignity. I honestly believe that many people would love to work, but are unable to. There's not enough support for them. And there is plenty of legislation in place to protect them at the workplace. Personally, I think there's more room to be done, both at regional government level at Holyrood, but also in the private sector. I'm covering Edinburgh Central as a constituency. One thing I'm encouraged about, despite how tough things are at the minute, I still see hiring in shop windows. And these jobs are sometimes in hospitality, sometimes in retail. There is a difficulty to get staff at the minute. And there's absolutely no reason why people who can work in some dimension could even work part-time. So the point I'm coming to, we would be looking to facilitate that. But the third thing I would say, and I say this, and I do respect the experience of Jane and Kate and Ross, they're in the political system. I'm completely new to it. My background is business. And basically, what I've been doing in my working life is looking at things that go wrong and putting in solutions to make them go right. So there's lots for us to do, but I think the thinking of someone outside the system could present more positive, deliverable solutions than the existing system is providing for us at this time.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very impressed that you are all more or less sticking to time here. And last but certainly not least, Eleanor Ryan Saha from Scottish Labour.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much, Val. I'm going to try and stick to time as well. This is an incredible question, and it's actually quite a personal and emotional one for myself. So one of my kids is disabled and neurodivergent, and she'll have high support needs for her whole life. And it's been a privilege to be her parent carer, and it has included periods of being an unpaid parent carer. So I have that lived experience, which I know is so important to your group. And what I'm really pleased with at the moment is that I'm able professionally to put that in conversation with the work that I do supporting families across Edinburgh who are caring for children who are disabled and neurodivergent. And the big bulk of these, as you can imagine, are unpaid parent carers who have really high caring responsibilities. And I don't actually like to frame it as unable to work because they're working their socks off all day, every day. But they're not currently in wage employment. What I'm going to do quickly is outline Scottish Labour's plans to support those who can't work. Before that, just a quick rebuttal to reform. I'm really curious. My understanding was that the Equalities Act was something that Reform wanted to repeal straight away if they end up anywhere near power in Westminster. And I know we're focusing on Scottish issues, and I really respect that. But it would be remiss of me not to draw attention to that, because that scares me. That's what my daughter's life depends on, those rights. So, you know, I'm really interested to hear what our Reform colleague thinks about that, because it seems to be that goal identified by Nigel Farage seems massively at odds with what he's just said. So Scottish Labour has lots of really promising stuff in the manifesto. Crucially, we would absolutely commit to maintaining Social Security Scotland's role, but we'd be working on increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of this service and ensuring that everyone who relies on those payments are getting everything they need. We'd also make sure that we standardise the delivery of the Scottish Welfare Fund, and this is going to be so that it's targeted towards preventing homelessness and kind of ending that postcode lottery that many of us are aware of in terms of access to services, and it would improve integration with local money advice services. We'd also take the cost of living as part of the parcel of supporting those who can't work. So we'll address that through things like keeping down the cost of public transport, maintaining free bus travel, preventing a return to peak rail fares, and we're really keen to get local bus services under control so that unpaid folk can move around the city in the way that they absolutely need to and are entitled to. We'd also be really keen to boost the uptake. Yeah, we'd boost the uptake of the Warm Homes discount. Thanks very much.
It'd help if I took myself off mute. Thank you all for your responses and for mostly staying within time. That is very much appreciated. The next question from Linda is about unemployment and underemployment. So I'll pass to Linda again.
Okay, let's see if we can do as well on the second load of timings. Now, unemployment rates are rising. However, there aren't enough types of jobs available, especially for migrants, parents, university graduates. This can mean that individuals are having to apply for minimum wage work and are not able to use their qualifications in order to have or advance a career. What will you and your party do to ensure that people are able to find work at levels appropriate for their skills and able to have meaningful employment and careers? Now, this time, Eleanor, you're not getting time for a breath. We're going to start with yourself.
Lovely, thank you. I'll start by sharing a stat that I came across at the weekend from the Milburn Review, which is that across the UK, 16 to 24s who are not in education, employment or training, the number of those people is equivalent to the third largest city in the UK. So we've got this huge youth unemployment problem. It's a crisis, essentially. That scale is a crisis, and I'm really proud of the measures that Scottish Labour will take within Scotland to address this. We would absolutely be looking to work with regional colleges and make sure that we're extending place-based learning to all of the areas across Scotland. So we'd make sure that we have 9,000 extra apprenticeships in key industries, and we'd absolutely guarantee that every qualified applicant has a place. And we'd also introduce a UCAS-style clearing system. So if you get rejected from your first choice, you're not going to be stranded. So we're working hard to make sure that lifelong learning is available, that learning options are going to be accessible to everyone, and that they're going to be really geared towards an appropriate regional-based, place-based working opportunities. We'd also reform procurement, so public money that helps create jobs here in Scotland, to train Scottish workers, and we'd help Scottish companies over foreign ones as a key part of our industrial strategy. We'd look also to establish a parent work scheme. So we'd be funding colleges to deliver dedicated training and employment support for parents who are unemployed or in low paid work. And they can fill, again, this local approach, they can fill local skill gaps and they can boost their household incomes in that way to help lift more children out of poverty. We'll also orient the welfare system around helping people with transitions into work as appropriate, as is fitting to the individual, and we'd ensure that Scotland's social security system supports those who want to take up paid work or can take up paid work or to increase their hours. That was in time, wasn't it?
I am so super impressed by this. So next, it's the same question to Gary Neal from Reform UK, please.
Right. Okay. So this is quite a searching question, and I'll do my utmost to stay in time. Unemployment and underemployment. Now let's hit the unemployment one first. Eleanor's right. That 16 to 24-year-old statistic is quite damning. Okay. But I think there's a lot that could be put in place by the system, and if we get elected, this is one of the things that we'll be doing, is to make sure that the whole ethic of work is instilled in the education system at primary school, at secondary school, at college, and at university. The whole point of these educational establishments is to make people ready for work. And I would like to see the private sector get more involved in this, as they used to do with graduates, with people leaving college with diplomas and vocational. We simply need to give these young people more guidance so that they are studying for something that they can earn money from, and so that they don't get a degree in something and they end up flipping burgers or selling T-shirts to their friends. Yep, we need the education system directed towards getting people into work. So from that point of view, yes, that's why we got unemployment. There's so many able, well-meaning kids just not given the opportunity. They're not guided properly, I would suggest. Underemployment, that kind of merges into that, where you have skilled people, educated people in the wrong jobs. But back to the point I made earlier, there are jobs out there. You only have to walk around town. Lothian buses are screaming for drivers. Amazon are screaming for warehouse people and drivers. Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's are looking for people to fill the shelf. Now, this is not great paid work, but it is work, and it gets people on the move. And the final point I want to make about unemployment and underemployment is basically, for any of this to be addressed, we need a strong, vibrant economy. Sadly, one of the areas of underemployment at the minute is oil and gas workers. Their jobs have gone. They're on the job centre. And we need to get that industry up and running again so that that will trickle down into the well-being of the Scottish economy.
Oh, we can have yous all back for every election. Yous are so good at this timing malarkey. Thank you, Gary. And now over to Kate Nevins from the Scottish Greens.
Hi, so I guess probably exactly the opposite to everything Gary just said. Sorry, Gary. So make education more about play, not about work. Make sure that we're getting people good, fair work that's not exploitative. So definitely not with Amazon. And invest in renewables and getting jobs into renewables as a as a counter to Gary's point. But yeah, I think this question gets at something about underemployment that unemployment statistics don't, like, often obscure a little bit. Like, the headline figures don't capture the graduate that's working in a call centre because there's nothing else, or the migrant doctor who's working a minimum wage warehouse job because their qualifications aren't recognised in Scotland, or the parent, almost always a mother, who has stepped to easier work because childcare costs are more than a full-time salary, and they've taken on different work. And we know that this kind of underemployment disproportionately affects those who are already experiencing multiple, often overlapping inequalities. So women, disabled people, migrants, communities of colour, communities on lower incomes. So yeah, it's also a symptom of a labour market that's been deliberately structured in this way. So it's deliberately structured to keep wages low and workers insecure. And actually, employability support that's often offered through places like the job centre, often forcing people into low pay and insecure jobs when we need long-term, well-paid, fair work. We also live in a system where sorry, I've gone big picture with this one. We also live in a system where we vastly undervalue certain types of work. We vastly undervalue care work. We vastly undervalue underpaid work that Eleanor was just talking about, often work done by women. And we treat those in precarious work, so gig workers like our delivery drivers and seasonal workers, extraordinarily badly. And we started using automated apps that drive their wages down. So I think we need big sort of system and culture change around this. And I think we would tackle it from various different directions, which I'll try and outline a few. But we would want to improve access to employability services, but we'd like employability services to be run by experienced third and public sector organisations rather than private sector organisations that are making a profit. We'd also invest in really high quality retraining and skills development around the green economy and the care economy. And we do things like raise the minimum wage for carers. We would push for overseas qualifications to be recognised here. We try and expand Fair Work First as well. So make sure that any organisations that are tendering for a government contract, they have to pay living wage. So for us, it's about making sure that work is well paid and fair and long term and not insecure.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kate. And now we'll hear from Ross Clark from the SNP. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question again. We've done and we've made good progress in Scotland on unemployment. We've worked to reduce unemployment to the lowest levels in the UK, and that performance is reflected in our economy. In terms of youth unemployment specifically, we've met our target to reduce youth unemployment by 40% by 2021 in 2017. That was 4 years early. And we're working to protect jobs, industries across the country. But it's also about making sure that work is fair as well. We were the first government in the UK to become a real living wage employer. And we're also ensuring that alongside all the other actions we're taking, like the cost of living, that the majority of people in Scotland pay less income tax than they would elsewhere in the UK, supporting people on the lower ends of the income spectrum. And we're also investing heavily into employability services. In the recent Scottish Government budget, it was 90 million into employability support. We're also wanting to make sure that is spent as efficiently and as correct as it could to really support people, to address unemployment and underemployment. In a manifesto, we've committed to a review of employability support to make sure that, that investment, for example, is targeted in the right way. And one of the other barriers to people getting into employment, which has been touched on already, is childcare. Childcare can often be a barrier to people and parents taking up employment. And that's why we want to massively expand childcare. We want to make sure childcare is available from 9 months right up until the end of primary school, making sure there's that support right through a child's life. And we also want to make sure that once people are getting to the end of their education journey, that there are jobs and apprenticeships available to them. Where vast majority of people do enter positive destinations as they leave school and education. We also want to increase apprenticeships specifically. We want to increase apprenticeships to 150,000, and we want to increase graduate apprenticeships specifically to 80,000. And there's also, we also recognise that not everyone always has equal access to employment or apprenticeships as everyone else. That's why we'll want to ensure a dedicated disabled young person's apprenticeship scheme as well, to make sure that no one is left behind, or there isn't a particular group which suffers unemployment or underemployment more than others. And we want to make sure that we're protecting what we're already doing in Scotland and expand it as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. And last but certainly not least, once again, is Jane Alliston Pickard from the Liberal Democrats.
Hi, you're on mute at the moment, Jane.
Apologies, please start the clock now. Firstly, to put something straight, I am not of a political breed. I have come from outside that. I worked as a fund manager for the first 10 years of my career, and then I changed careers and I've worked in the mental health services for the past 15. And yeah, just to clarify, that informs absolutely everything why I'm with the Liberal Democrats, because, fairness, a fair economy that meets everybody's needs and comes with compassion and understanding to get people to thrive is absolutely where I sit in my everyday work. So this is so key. We want a strong and fair economy with good job quality. It's a little frustrating listening to my SNP fellow presenter talk as if they haven't had the opportunity to put this in place for the past 19 years. We agree there should be apprenticeships. There should be a conversation around the table with employers and with businesses to make sure that we have a proper industrial strategy and a skills strategy, that we understand where the gaps are and where the coming needs are of business, and that can be filled. But I can tell you, in this experience of standing for election and speaking to business, they simply haven't been at the table or listened to in this. So we are where we are today, and we really need to get the speed up on it. So we would work with business. We would, on day one, get business around a table, design an industrial strategy, get business growth and investment to create better quality jobs in dialogue with business, and also have a long-term workforce plan of government, especially in public services like health and care, and make those attractive destinations we've already heard today. Transport is key, that people can move safely at whatever time of day is needed, and the infrastructure to link better access to jobs and for regional opportunities. We also think we would have better quality jobs if we were back in with better trade and a customs union with Europe, and that would increase investment back into Scotland and create better labour market opportunities, and also offer our own young people the quality opportunity of going overseas, improving their languages, improving their experience, and hopefully coming back with those skills. Really important. I grew up in a household facing, because of family breakup, frankly, really difficult poverty circumstances, better financial education. I see it every day in working in my counselling work as well, that generally there is not good financial understanding, and that needs to be placed in schools when appropriate. I think primary school, I'm also with Kate. I think in primary we want to prepare our little citizens to be emotionally regulated, happy, playful, and grow to be good, able citizens, and they can choose and work on the skills through secondary school. And we also, in our manifesto, have embedded an entitlement to youth work between 11 and 25. I can tell you, my experience of going to work was incredibly positive. It started at the age of 13. I started with a Saturday. And that experience set me up for life. Lots of little jobs, those do not exist now for our young, and they need to have experience elsewhere. And absolutely, and if you look at our manifesto, that's what we would enable our young to progress through. Thank you.
Again, I keep not taking myself off mute. Apologies. I want to thank you all for your answers, and I'm going to pass to Linda again for the final question. And this one is in relation to food poverty.
Okay, you're on the home run now. With regards to food poverty, there's great uncertainty in the short and longer term effects of current international conflict, and increasing numbers of people on low incomes depend on food banks in order to survive. Now, this could be due to low wages or insufficient social benefits. But there's also serious health implications in relation to the quality and nutrition of food available, especially in schools and for people who live in what we refer to as food deserts. Now, that is leading to longer periods of poor health for the poorest in society. So my question is, what will you and your party do to ensure that everyone is able to access good quality, nutritious food? And we are going to start with Kate Nevins from the Scottish Greens this time, please.
I was just reflecting on the jobs that I had when I was a teenager, and they were not good, and I was very exploited. So I'm very jealous, Jane. The existence of food banks in Scotland, it's a sign of a massive political failure, particularly when we're seeing that it's people who are in work who are needing to use it, nurses. So the Scottish Greens' goal would be to make food banks unnecessary by ensuring that every person in Scotland has enough money to feed themselves and their family with dignity. So that for us means actions on income first. So that's about doing things like increasing the Scottish Child Payment, to £40 a week immediately, and then rising to £55 a week by the end of Parliament. It's also about maximising people's incomes by helping people claim what they are entitled to in terms of social security, deploying income maximisation advisors in schools and GP practices and other community hubs to make sure that people get what they are entitled to. Also increasing wages in sectors like care and making sure, as I mentioned earlier, that any public procurement pays the living wage. And as mentioned, we would also work towards a universal basic income to get that floor for everybody. Reducing cost of daily life, so we would massively expand free childcare to children from the age of 2. We would also expand free bus travel we managed to get free bus travel for young people, but we would expand that to everyone in the next Parliament. On food and food quality specifically, one of the things the Greens would do is we would support local food hubs and community-owned food infrastructure that bring good food into communities, particularly the communities that the market has abandoned. And we would strengthen and properly fund school meal provision and work towards universal free school meals, making sure that no child goes hungry. We'd also expand Best Start grants and Best Start foods, including widening what could be bought, so families, particularly those with young children, can afford nutritious food from day one. There's the international dimension to this mention, so I think the illegal war on Iran means that we're now looking at like 20% inflation on food and fuel, which is horrendous. So we do need to take quite seriously our capacity to produce and supply our own food in Scotland, and that means supporting Scottish farmers to produce sustainable, high quality food for the local domestic market, which is actually not something that you might be surprised if you look at the numbers that actually a lot of Scottish farmers are producing non-food items. Backing nature-friendly farming, reducing food miles, and supporting local producers to reduce our reliance on long and fragile food chains. Promoting things like plant-rich diets, fair supply chains, and better conditions for agricultural workers as well, and making sure that we're prioritising local procurement in public institutions. So bringing in local, good, nutritious, sustainable foods. Sorry, I can see you smiling at me, Caroline.
Thank you, Kate. And the same question to Gary Neal from Reform UK, please. You're on mute, Gary.
Can you hear me now?
Aye.
You can hear me now. Okay, sorry about that. Here we go. Two things I want to show you very quickly. I always come prepared for this. This is from the Trussell Trust, okay? Food banks in Scotland are a national disgrace. The Trussell Trust are now actually telling us that some people think this is the normal way to live, okay? That's what the Trussell Trust is saying. This is from the Edinburgh Food Project. Look at that chart. That's food banks, okay? Now, I am going to tell it like it is. This is a section of our economy which is a disgraceful growth economy. The government in Scotland over 19 years has produced this. And the reason that it's produced that is because their economic policy is a disaster for the Scottish people. They have choked this economy with high energy costs, and there's no getting away from it. Everything is joined at the hip at the cost of energy. Food, materials, transport, you name it, and energy's in the middle. And this is why we have a food problem. Kate's right about the farms, nutritious food. But the sober truth is farmers aren't growing this food. There's no money in it. The only thing farmers make money out of on the east coast of Scotland is the barley, which goes to the whiskey industry. Half the food on our supermarket shelves comes in from abroad because our energy costs are so high in Scotland that we can't produce nutritious, competitively priced food. So I think it's important that we understand this, that food banks aren't an accident. They are mismanagement of the Scottish economy. Okay, and now people have it in their head, well, this is the way of it. This is the way it is for me. No, it's not. When we get in, we will be kickstarting this economy. We will be on the side of the farmers. We will be opening up the food market, which is so restricted because of the cost of energy. And all these things are interlinked together, but it all gravitates down to one principle, the cost of energy. And that is increasing the cost of everything. We start getting our energy flowing, we will see our energy fuel bills come down, we will see the cost of our food come down, and with a stronger economy, we will be able to offer people the best form of welfare there is, and that is a job, a good job, a well-paid job, where they can afford food without having to beg for it at a food bank. I'm sorry if I'm pressing this point home. I've been in so many hustings when this common theme has come through again. But after 19 years of Scottish government, these people have been left behind. And when we get in, they'll be the first people that we'll be talking to.
Thank you very much, Gary. And the same question will now go to Jane Alliston Pickard from the Liberal Democrats. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you. I'm a little confused on this, to be honest. The rise in food banks across the whole of the UK was post-austerity, where I don't have time to go into it for 3 minutes, but oil prices and energy prices were low at that point. If we produce oil and energy in this country, great. It doesn't lower the prices. I heard Reform say they do a special deal with business so that they would sell oil and gas into the country cheaper. Well, frankly, if they do that, we'll be paying for that by the fact that they will not pay so much for the licenses because it's not worth their investment. High energy prices are driven by global conflict, and we are stuck with them. We have to address it on a long-term view. And food poverty has been an issue for a longer period of time than the energy issues. We have to look very clearly about the lack of fair work for people that means that they have a good standard of living and can afford housing and the utility bills and food. So our priorities is to reduce cost of living measures and food system reforms. Food system reforms, very similar to what we've heard from the Greens. I regret that we left Europe because there were subsidies that were coming in across the UK that benefited both the environment and our food production, but we are where we are. So we do need to look after our farmers and have fair farming policies aimed at sustainable food production. We certainly need to make sure that people can access healthy food and purchase it. And we would like to see home insulation and renewable energies working towards cheaper energy bills over a long period, so we are not swung around by what happens globally. We've mentioned the Trussell Trust. The Trussell Trust went through a cross-party inquiry in 2023 into food banks. And what they said is cash-first support could help, making support more accessible, more dignified, and more flexible. So we need to think like that about whether food banks are really the best way to address poverty at this level, at this really basic level in households across our country. Now, we can improve data sharing between all levels of government to develop a holistic picture of local hardship, to understand where those funds may need to go, and also to understand where those food deserts are. And we should have funding to develop a strong local support system. And we would like to put in planned family hubs. And this would be a great place where local people can access in and flag if they are having issues, feeding back up into government and into policy, playing a role so that the food bank, the crisis point, is not the first port of call. And I know we're just talking to Edinburgh here, but I would say that this kind of local crisis support has to be accessible to all, whether you're rural or urban. We cannot leave anybody behind who is at this level of poverty. It is shameful in this country. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Jane. I'm loving the passion from everyone.
Despair.
Tell me about it. And now we'll go over to Eleanor Ryan Zaha from Scottish Labour.
Oh. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah, we've got you now. Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh gosh. Apologies, I had a little signal problem there. I share the passion. I share the outrage, the despair. I also see a lot of hope in my own constituency in Edinburgh North, and we've got an incredible joined up sector of food growing, community gardens, and agroecology programs. So I know as someone from the constituent wanting to represent the constituency that healthy food can be grown locally in urban centres by the community for the community, eaten together, shared, enjoyed, and I'm so heartened by what I see at that local level. I have to say the national picture, I mean, after 19 years, the legacy of hungry children is absolutely outrageous. And I'll say this, it's my last hustings, put it all out there, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. We cannot live in a country where children turn up to school hungry. I've been a primary school teacher, and that is the reality here. And if the SNP were to reflect on anything, it has to be that. That being said, Scottish Labour would work with supermarkets to promote healthy food, because we're not just talking about feeding folks, we're talking about helping folks to eat well. We'd reduce the sale of foods with no nutritional value. We'd also convene a summit straight away with supermarkets and other partners to help drive down the costs of staple items and help protect family budgets in the face of the continued international instability that we've all been referring to. In terms of school meals, we would maintain the free school meal system. We would be maintaining the write-off of school meal debt, and we'd review the thresholds for free school meals in secondary schools, and we'd also extend breakfast clubs to all primary schools, so that all those in need can have at least one nutritious warm school meal a day. We'd modernise Scotland's agricultural support system so that it's fit for purpose and fairer for all of us, and that would help to ensure that public money for farming support of food production and biodiversity is helping to maintain rural communities while delivering food for Scotland. And we also would want to drive economic growth that would be green, that would be sustainable, and that would help us deliver this improvement in public services, if that's what you can call ending child hunger. We would be working hard to market brand Scotland to bring in more money to the sector and actually food Scotland's world famous food, for better or for worse. I'm a big fried Mars bar fan, to be fair. That would be a huge part of brand Scotland, and it should be. And personally, I would like to see, I mean, this isn't a Scottish Labour policy, but I don't think that enough work is being done to address the fact that many children who are dependent on free school meals for their one hot meal a day are not able to attend school. So that's a huge concern for me.
Please
it would
finish
be,
up your thoughts.
yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Caroline. I'll stop there.
You don't want to get on the wrong side of Caroline. She's a devil with that mute button. Thank you very much, Eleanor. And now we will hear from Ross Clark from the SNP, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for the question. Just very quickly on the economy, Scotland's economy since the SNP came into power has generally outperformed the rest of the UK. And one of the reasons that we have so many food banks in the UK is because of the programme of austerity that we've seen from the UK government. And I would add that a Reform UK party led by Lord Offord certainly is not on the side of people experiencing food poverty, so don't be fooled by that. The cost of living has had massive impacts on food prices. We've seen them rise and rise, and there's some things which we have already been doing in Scotland to generally, improve access to affordable food and essentials for people. We've got the Best Start food grants, and we've got kind of a cost of living package that kind of addresses lots of other costs in people's lives, whether that be the abolition of peak rail fares, the freezing of rail fares, free prescriptions, free eye examinations, the baby box, and lots of things like that. Or the Scottish Child Payment, again, lifting children out of poverty, easing those costs elsewhere as well. In terms of child poverty, one of the questions, one of the things which we have done as well on a UK-wide basis is push the UK government to reverse or abolish their two-child cap, which was supported by the Conservatives and was kept in place by Labour, who had to be dragged into reversing it, dragged into lifting tens of thousands of children out of poverty. So I would add that point as well. Generally, as well, we want to become a good food nation. So that's about supporting food growing, making sure we have a healthy and happy food system. But in terms of specific commitments that we would make in the next Parliament, we want to introduce a cap on the price of essential foods to make sure that essential foods such as bread, milk, eggs, that there are affordable options for everyone to be able to access. While food prices have been going up, supermarkets have still been making money and profits, and we want to ensure that people have access to those essentials, because this is also a public health emergency. If people don't have access to their essential foods, they don't have access to a healthy and nutritious diet that they need to live happy and healthy lives. So that's one thing we'd want to do. We'd also want to expand Bright Start breakfast clubs to every primary school to make sure people have a healthy start to their day, which has a positive knock-on effect to education and attainment. I would also want to expand free school meals in primary schools as well, and
Please
also
wrap up your
tackle the
thoughts.
issue of school meal debt as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and it's back to me now. Thank you, Linda, for the questions, and thank you all of you for your answers. And I'm sure that you've given us all food for thought. Now, before we finish tonight, I'd like to invite each of you to give a final 1-minute response to the following. And please be aware that the time warnings are still active. Why should people in poverty vote for you and your party? And if we could we please start with Gary Neal from Reform UK?
Excuse me. There we are. We got it. Okay, 1 minute as best I can. I've never been in government. I'm new to politics. And for me, this is an absolutely amazing challenge. But we have to learn from successful economies that produce successful results. And I can think of no better economy to learn from than across the Irish Sea in the Republic of Ireland. Same population size as Scotland, give or take. Same social issues, same political divide, same issues, housing, gangs, drugs, like we have in Scotland. But they return budget surpluses every year. 12 billion euro last year, 6 billion euro this year, all down to good, sound economic management. And with those surpluses, they are able to subsidize, they are able to improve, they are able to reward people that work hard, and they are able to look after those that are vulnerable. Our economy in Scotland is nowhere near that.
Please
and I listen to everyone saying we should put stuff in. Absolutely, it's got to be paid for. And we need a vibrant economy to pay for all these things. So why should people experience injustice or poverty? Well, we intend to put this economy up and running so that we will eradicate poverty.
Thank you, Gary. And if we could please go to, am I on? Yep. Could we please go to Eleanor Ryan Saha from Scottish Labour, please?
Yep, Scotland needs change. Change to poverty is systemic. It's going to require action across all government. That has to be joined up. It has to have vision and reach, and it can't be done just through a single payment alone. So Scottish Labour are determined to tackle the inequalities and poverty that hold back the potential of so many people. And we know that to truly eradicate poverty, which has to be the goal, we've got to tackle the root causes, and we can't keep relying on sticking plasters. This is why we've put poverty at the heart of our plans to tackle the housing emergency, to deal with ill health, to drive down the NHS waiting lists, and to raise standards and attainment in our education system, and where appropriate, to support people into good work. Scottish Labour are committed to maintaining the child payment, but to break the cycle of poverty, we need to do more to help parents into paid work and help young people achieve their potential. And that's how we reduce inequality, and that's how we'll deliver a better future for all.
Thank you. And next, Jane Alliston Pickard from the Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just to note that Ireland has done incredibly well, and part of that has been the fact that it is still got access and has benefited from the UK overall leaving the EU and headquarters moving across and taking their profits and their growth with them into Ireland. So let's not pretend that that isn't part of the success story of Ireland. The Liberal Democrats have a strong history of delivery for those experiencing poverty, whether in Westminster by raising the level of income earned before tax was paid significantly, and by campaigning in Scotland for the additional funding that comes via the pupil premium. And we will always focus on fairness as a core principle across economic and social policy. Key is our understanding that we have to have prevention in place. This cannot all be at the end where we meet people in poverty. We have to go back up the water source, as it were, with investment in healthcare, in social care, in education, and in housing, because these are the things that lead, if they're not in place as you grow up in this country, it leads you into a life of ill health. And that is so closely linked to poverty. But our core philosophy will always be guided that we want to enable people and empower people to live with dignity and fulfill their potential and work and be an active part of society and take whatever they have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we please go to Kate Nevins from Scottish Greens next?
Hi. So yeah, we feel it, right? We know that our communities in Edinburgh and across Scotland are struggling. We're struggling with cost of living, we're struggling with a housing crisis, we're struggling with cuts to services, we're struggling with our mental health. And addressing these issues has got to be number one priority for all of us, whoever gets elected. Scottish Green Party have already brought in changes that are having a meaningful impact on people's lives. So we massively expanded free school meals, we addressed wiped out school meal debt. We fought successfully for rent controls. We got free buses for young people, which we would extend to everyone in the next Parliament. And we're currently polling to perhaps double our numbers in Scottish Parliament in May. And I'm genuinely excited to see what we will be able to do as a bigger group. And I really recommend having a look at our manifesto for all of the amazing policies that we have around cost of living and poverty. I think what I want to end by saying is that I think what the Scottish Greens are bringing to this election is a sense of hope, that we can make the changes that are needed, even if these are big, sometimes unimaginable systemic changes. We don't have to stick to the status quo that simply isn't working for the majority in our society. We don't have to have a politics that is in thrall to massive corporations, to greedy landlords, and to billionaires that are making themselves richer. We can have a politics that works for people and for planet rather than for profit.
Thank you. And last but not least, from Ross Clark from SNP.
Thank you very much. I've spoken a little bit about the action the SNP has already taken in government, such as lifting 100,000 children out of poverty, because in the SNP, we don't just want to tackle poverty, we want to eradicate it. We're providing the best cost of living package as anywhere in the UK, but a vote for the SNP is a vote to not only protect that, but also to expand it, because we want to do even more. We want to increase the Scottish child payment to £40 for all babies under one. We want to introduce a £2 bus fare cap across Scotland, and we want to introduce a cap on the price of essential foods. So my closing message to those who are experiencing the injustice of poverty is that the SNP and an SNP government will always be on your side.
Thank you. So I'm just going to make a few finishing statements and then we'll be finished for the night. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone at End Poverty Edinburgh. And yes, I am thanking my own group, but for planning the event and for coming up with the questions. It really is a group effort. Thank you also to the Poverty Alliance for providing tech support and hosting this webinar session. Thank you to you, the audience, for taking the time out of your week to watch and listen. And a massive thank you to each of the candidates for taking part tonight. And they are Ross Clark from the SNP, who is a list candidate for South Scotland, Eleanor Ryan Saha from Scottish Labour, who is standing in Edinburgh Northern and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East, Kate Nevins from Scottish Greens, who is standing in Edinburgh North Eastern and Leith and is also a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East, Gary Neal from Reform UK, who is standing in Edinburgh Central and is a list candidate for Edinburgh and Lothians East, and Jane Alston Pickett from the Liberal Democrats, who is standing in Edinburgh Southern and is also a list candidate with Edinburgh and Lothians East. Remember, this will be posted online shortly, and you can find more information on the EPE webpage on the Poverty Alliance website. Thank you all very much, and good night.